I got my mind right. I got my money right. I'm ready for war. Let's get to it. Look, first and foremost, I got to welcome you to Big Dog Tactical. This is a show that talks about different topics from firearms to self-defense, having a big dog warrior mind state, tactical equipment, mentoring, personal growth, and so much more. You feel me? Now listen, the mission of this channel is to inspire thoughts that reach past the stereotypes that consistently plague American society. With each episode, we're trying to ignite a passion for gaining understanding by questioning, learning, and making informed decisions. I promote gun ownership and spreading community knowledge to collectively increase and promote gun safety. However, we specifically target the minority community, although we welcome input from all walks of life. You feel me? Look, this is the first YouTube episode of Big Dog Tactical. Although we own a physical store that was created in 2007, we've been kind of resistant to bringing our brand to social media. But recent events, like the world shutting down, has made us kind of adjust our strategy. Look, social media is different in the real world, but here we are trying to adjust to social media. And we're the only channel that's all about showcasing gun owners who are excited about firearms and who are pushing the 2A community forward. You feel me? Look, we talk about everything and anything on this channel. New guns, government decisions, survival tactics, and of course, news from the firearms industry from a personal perspective. Now, I'm not a gun expert, but I have commentary that can possibly give you a different perspective or a different point of view. So hate it or love it, we're here, and I gotta advise you, get your weight up. You feel me? Or get ate up. Look, I've been pondering for months what to do the first episode on, and I'm here talking about something that's completely unexpected. It's like I'm getting ready to give like a history lesson. But, hey, it is what it is. Look, so I'm on social media, and people were telling me that the Big Dog logo that we have was real generic. They were saying, it was basic. And, it's like they were saying they hated me because I was supporting the Second Amendment. And, of course, they was also calling me racist and stupid and ugly. All this kind of crazy stuff. Now, the crazy thing, they didn't know what ethnicity I was, but they just was calling me, all kind of crazy names. Then, after they called me stupid and said that I hated black people, they started talking about colonial forces. They spoke about colonialism like it was a thing of the past. They talked to me about colonialism like it was something in the past and that it did not affect people in 2021. So I was so shocked. Yeah, super shocked. So I decided to get on and talk about colonialism in this era. You dig? Listen, colonialism is defined as control by one power over a dependent area or people. In this area, you know what I'm saying? In this era that we live in, and in practice, colonialism is when one country violently invades and takes control of another country, claims the land as its own, and then sends the people or settlers to live on that land. For example, this is what happens and is happening right now to the Palestinian people. And of course, this happened famously in America. There were two great waves of colonialism in recorded history. The first wave began in the 15th century during Europe's Age of Discovery. Now, during this time, European countries like Britain, Spain, France, Portugal, they colonized lands across North and South America. Now, the motivation for the first wave of colonial expansion was summed up with three words: God, gold, and glory. We're going to call that the big G Trinity. You feel me? So, first, God. Because missionaries felt it was their moral duty to spread Christianity, they believed a higher power would reward them for saving the souls of colonial subjects. Gold. Because colonizers would exploit, rape the resources of countries in order to bolster their own economy. And glory, since European nations would often compete with one another over the glory of attaining the greatest number of colonies. That's right. Think about that. You know what? You don't got to take my word for it. Do some research. You understand what I'm saying? Colonial logic asserted that a place did not exist unless white people had seen it and testified to its existence. But European colonists did not actually discover any land. The New World, as it would be called by Europeans, was not new at all. People have been living and thriving in these lands for hundreds of years. But in most history books that you know about, Europe's expansion is remembered as exploration. And the men who helmed ships that landed in foreign countries are viewed as heroes. The reality is that these horrible humans were terrorists, and they proceeded to commit rape, violence, and genocide against native people. One of these men was an Italian barbarian that they called an explorer, and his name was Christopher Columbus. This guy even has a federal holiday right now recognizing him as an individual. You feel me? Now, the story is that Columbus thought he was on his way to Asia, but he found himself in the Caribbean instead. The first indigenous people that he came across were the Taino natives. The Taino natives, they accounted for the majority of people living on the island of what is now called Hispaniola, which is now divided into Haiti and the Dominican Republic. The Taino natives had a highly evolved and complex culture, but this did not stop Columbus from claiming the island and its inhabitants for Spain. That's right. He claimed that island on behalf of Spain. And by 1550, that's only 58 years after he landed on that island. What was once a thriving culture and a community was severely decimated by European destruction, disease, and the brutality of a newly instated slave economy. The second wave of colonial expansion began during the 19th century. And of course, it centered around the African continent in what is now called the Scramble for Africa. The European nations, Britain, France, Portugal, Spain, they sliced up the continent like an apple pie. That's right. These terrorists created arbitrary borders and boundaries and claimed large portions of land for themselves. These artificial borders split cultural groups, and it resulted in fierce ethnic tensions that have had devastating ramifications throughout the continent. And it's affected right now. Listen, indigenous political, economic, and social institutions were destroyed. And the traditional ways of African life were decimated. You know why? Because the European people deemed these people, or these Africans, to be inferior. They called them savages. That's right. Among the most brutal of the colonial regimes was that of a Belgian under the name of King Leopold II. Now, they make a Leopold scope. You got what I'm saying? So do some research on Leopold. He was known as the Butcher of the Congo. It's well documented. You know, his acts of violence against the Congolese people resulted in more than 10 million deaths. This shit is crazy, man. Now, Belgium, just like a lot of white Western worlds, can directly attribute much and almost all of their wealth and prosperity to the exploitation and the death of indigenous people of color. The treatment of the indigenous people on the land now known as the United States is completely horrifying. Primarily the British. Yeah, the British. These Europeans are the ones who settled here. And just like the Europeans who settled in Africa and the rest of the Americas, or what would eventually be called the Americas, they did not care that there were people already living on the land. The European did not want peace and harmony between cultures. They wanted the land for themselves. They did not want to share abundant resources. They wanted to generate wealth to fill their own pockets. They had no respect for indigenous culture or history. They wanted to enforce their own will. They wanted to magnify their own culture. These colonizers did not care that the land was considered sacred. They didn't care that existence was considered communal. The European believed that everything, including the earth, was meant to be bought and sold. The Europeans who first settled along the east coast of the United States believed it was their manifest destiny. Yeah, you heard that's right. Yeah. They used the term called manifest destiny to justify the rape and murder of the natives of this land. Manifest destiny basically meant that it was a God-granted right to claim territory for themselves and for their own prosperity. And as they spread across the entirety of the continental U.S., they pushed the indigenous population out. I'm talking about people who had lived on this land and tended to this land for thousands of years. They pushed them further and further west. The natives, or the indigenous people, were moved to reservations. These reservations were parcels of land that were barren and far from economic opportunities. And you know what? In 1830, another slave owner by the name of President Andrew Jackson. Now, if you don't know who that is, that was just another slave rapist that is commemorated on the United States $20 bill. That's right. He signed something called the Indian Removal Act, which led to the forced removal, relocation, and mass death of millions of indigenous people. Now, what's crazy is in 1838, the Cherokee natives, they were forced to move west by the United States government because the United States government seized control of their land, and they were forced to walk thousands of miles. Yeah, that's right. Thousands and thousands of miles. The Cherokees, they died on what would later come to be called the Trail of Tears. This crazy, historic loss of life, land, and culture has led college professors, right now, college professors, they call this historical trauma. Now, I have talked about the Africans and the natives of this land suffering from historical trauma. And historical trauma is basically intergenerational emotional and psychological damage, and it affects people in 2021. This legacy of colonialism continues to manifest itself in obvious ways. For example, many of the world's poorest countries are former European colonies. I want to suggest a book to you, though. It's called How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. This book talks about how poverty on a continent can be traced back to European exploration and exploitation of African resources. In the United States, those who lived on reservations, they experienced an extraordinary high level of poverty. They suffered from alcoholism, unemployment. Their suicide rates are off the charts. In less obvious ways, the violence of colonial thinking continues to shape the trajectories of countries that were once colonizers. You see, colonizers believed the world was theirs for the taking. They saw the masses of people as disposable. And they believed that nothing mattered more than the currency in a white man's pocket. You understand what I'm saying? Look, the world's top 1% continue to hoard the majority of the Earth's resources, and they are like on an unending quest for profit. Because in their mind, profit trumps the need of the majority of the people. And it becomes clear that colonialism is not just a relic of the past. Colonialism is alive right now. Look, wherever colonialism has manifested in the world, I'm talking about from across the Americas to every corner of the African continent, it has been met with fierce resistance, fierce struggles of resistance and insurrection throughout history. That's what I want you to think about. Throughout history, indigenous people have risen up and successfully overthrown colonial forces. This demonstrates that while these colonizers can steal land, they can rape the people, murder the people, take their resources, but they can't take the dignity of a people who are determined to be free. So I encourage you to ask yourself, why have you never heard of the thousands? Yeah, that's right, thousands of insurrections that happen within this country. Ask yourself why the books only glorify one group of people. Ask yourself why almost every street you travel down is named after someone that never looks like you. I'm telling you, you got to think about this stuff. People don't think about this. Look at all the schools. Who are they named after? All of the roads, almost every single road you go down, almost every single road that you travel on, look at who it's named after. The root of this problem is colonialism. Listen, you're hated. Even if you don't know this is a war, and even if they never call it a war, you are in a socially engineered war where the losers who have power convince you that you are the loser. Now listen, normal first episodes talk about light subjects, but this is not the first episode that I had in my mind. But here we are. You feel me? Look, I'm going to be talking about forbidden topics and so much more on this channel. So, as you can already see, this channel right here is only for big dogs. So if you're afraid of talking about things that people hate, then I understand. But if you want real dialogue and topics that affect the 2A community, then I invite you to become a part of the family and feel free to subscribe. If you hate the channel, then I still invite you to subscribe because I would love to hear your feedback. I'm always open for constructive criticism. You never know, but you can help me improve the channel, so feel free to reach out to me. This is Big Dog Tactical, reminding you to get your weight up and stay tactical. Peace.